and welcome.
And now, everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to Christina Kadinger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us here on campus and also online. My name is Christina Kadinger, and I'm a department chair in Game Studies, course director for Systems Thinking in the Game Design degree. I am hosting the session today titled, "This is not a panel about women in the entertainment industry." So please put your hands together and help me welcome our panelists. First, we have Kim Alpert, Director of Creative Technology at DCI-Artform and a 2013 Hall of Fame inductee. Laurie Brugger, Head of Rigging at Framestore, a 2011 Hall of Fame inductee. And Michelle, I'm going to totally butcher this, Sabolchick, Pettinato, Live Sound Engineer at STYX, 2015 Hall of Fame inductee. So please put your hands together for them. So ladies, I just want to start out with maybe what really drove you to come to Full Sail in the first place, and how you figured out that this was the passion, this was the area, this was where you wanted to conduct your life's work.
Okay. I mean, my finding Full Sail was kind of like awkward stumbling. I knew some guys that were doing a lot of recording and engineering and stuff like that, and I was studying music and working as a carpenter and an artist, and knew that I needed to learn marketing, and saw that Full Sail offered digital media, which is now a DAD, and was just like, oh, I can learn that stuff, I can do that stuff, and there was no question for me if it was here. The equipment and the technology was one of the main reasons that I came here. The ability and the access, it was so hard. You would go and see other college campuses and kids were waiting in line to get on a machine. And then I came here and it was like, okay, you can have these 4 computers at once, 24 hours a day. And that was just unbelievable. They give you a computer when you start. Like who does that? Who makes sure that you have those tools at home so you can be on all day?
I'm from Florida. So I knew, I grew up in Orlando, and I moved to Fort Lauderdale when I was a teenager, but I had a lot of friends that lived in Orlando, and I wanted to move back to Orlando, basically. That's the truth, that's the main motivation. I was like, I want to live there. And also, I like the idea of a little bit of an alternative education. You know, in retrospect, like I would have liked to take more history classes, but just out of curiosity, really. I think Full Sail was like really appealing because I thought that the student body like appealed to me like as a group of people, and I was really young. I was 17, so I kind of I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and it seemed like there was quite a lot of reach for the degree programs, and that I could stay pretty adaptable, and I thought I'd be good at computer animation. I don't know why, I didn't really know anything about computers. I still don't. But no, I think the main thing is I just had really encouraging parents who really encouraged me to learn and continue my education, and that sort of made it like a no-brainer for me, which it wasn't like super challenging for me to like take that leap because it just seemed really natural, yeah.
For me, when I was in high school, I decided I wanted to get into recording engineering, and I didn't know a thing about it. I grew up in a little town where there was no music business or industry, not even a live music scene, so I had a few stops and starts before I found Full Sail. I went to college for a year, realized that wasn't going to get me where I wanted to be. Went to another technical school that was a month-long program, kind of got a little basic background in recording engineering, and then tried to get a job at a studio, realized I still had a lot to learn. So I saw an ad for Full Sail back, this was in the late 80s, when it wasn't even this campus. It was a tiny little strip of office buildings up in Altamont Springs, but I saw an ad in a magazine and sent for the brochure, and I talked to Jay Noble and knew that, it was like for you, the hands-on training to me was a big thing. It's like, if I'm gonna do this, I need to learn on the gear. And I enrolled, and when I got here, it was the first time that, since I decided I wanted to be in music, that I was around people who actually made me feel like I could actually do what my goals were. And when I got to the school and took my live sound course, I completely switched gears and realized I wanted to do live sound as opposed to recording.
Awesome. So then let's shortly fast forward. You've graduated, and then what? Did you immediately have that job? Did you have to knock on doors? What drove you to continue down the path for getting to exactly where you wanted to go?
I don't know if I am where I want to go. I mean, I love where I am right now, but I don't know what's next. I wrote Harry Potter Monday and was like, I want to make this now. I was like, this is amazing.
I think that's important too, that you're living and you're doing something that you love and you dream about, and that every day is something new. I think that's important, that you still want to do more. You're not settling for exactly where you are. There's always something new out there. So, if that's the same for all of you, maybe that's definitely something that we can pass along to the students and give them that, you're never going to reach exactly, the end, I suppose.
But also, just to put a little bit of a different perspective on that, like, I know that like so much of the student body is like all about their passion for the industry, and this is their like main goal, and they have this shining beacon that they want to accomplish. But you don't have to be like that. You know what I mean? It's like, we're professionals, like we have jobs, and like you can sort of find your way in it. And that's what I did. I don't have like this passion for like computer graphics and I wanted to like do all this stuff. I just, like it's just kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm going to do that tomorrow. Like, that's cool. Yeah, that's a good opportunity. That looks like it would be fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, I think it's like key is finding something that you enjoy, because if you love what you do and if you really enjoy what you're working at, it never feels like a job. Like I've been touring for almost 25 years, and it never felt like work. The hours are grueling, the conditions sometimes are awful, but it's just still, I love what I do every day when I wake up, and never feel like I have a job.
So building off of that, what do you guys, what is your perspective on persistence and continuing to knock on the doors and to move forward and to move ahead? What do you see as the most persistent thing you did or have done or would like to do?
Well, there's a thing that I started to do, and I wish I would have started earlier, and that was write people that I don't know, whose work I love or who've produced something that I really love, and tell them how it affected me. And not in a like, I want to meet you and I have these questions way, but in like a very genuine way. And it actually happened. I saw letters that were exchanged between, I believe it was Stanley Kubrick and Saul Bass. And they were like this really cute series of letters that were just like, hey, Stan, saw 2001, really cool. And then like next thing you know, like he's doing the titles for The Shining. So, and those, I've told the story before and someone's like, you're no Saul Bass. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But it's still, it's a nice thing to do. And I've wound up in conversations with people that were my heroes and were my idols and that drove me and that pushed me. And there's a thing in culture now, and I don't know how much it's like really a thing, but since the economy has been kind of wonky, called informational interviewing, where you're not actually looking for a job, you just want to understand what the job is. And I've had several people that are grad school students ask me if they can do informational interviews, and friends of mine that are going on informational interviews. And it's really an incredible tool for information gathering and just to create that bigger, stronger network, because it's not about the job right now. It's not about the paycheck right now. It's not about the project right now. This is your life's work. You have to be ready for it to take your whole life. It's not going to be like one thing and then you go away forever and you've got like your tomb that you live in with their one award. You're always going to be building this. So, I think that's an answer.
Yes. Do you guys have anything you want to add to
I think persistence is definitely the key. I mean, you've got to just knock on doors. It's going to be, you're going to hear a lot of no's before someone finally gives you a shot. I mean, when I first got out of Full Sail, I sent resumes to every sound company in the country. And there, at that time there was a lot more than there are now, but I used to send resumes, call every single month and beg for a job and hear no, no, no. You just kind of get into whatever your field of choice is. Take whatever jobs you can get in that field, just keep working, and if it means having to move around and just go where the work is, every job will lead to another job. Even if it's not exactly what you want to be doing, there's always something you can learn from what you are doing. Whether it's people skills or technical skills, there's always something you can take away from what you're doing. So just remember that, and remember that everyone you meet is a potential contact, which could lead to a potential job. So you want to build your contact base, because you never know when someone might say, hey, I have a friend who needs somebody like you, and that leads to your dream job. So just keep that in mind.
Good. Okay. Who were some of the people that you guys looked up to, either while you were in school here or afterward or even today, that you really follow because of what they do or how they do it, or what they've done, that sort of thing? Like, who are some of your idols, I guess, or people that you followed intently, and why?
This question comes up quite a lot. I feel like in all these questions, I'm like, I didn't have like a beacon, you know what I mean? I don't feel like I had like a role model for this. Like, and I find that with a lot of people, like in my industry and the people that I work with, because they're like kind of freaks and geeks, so they like all find their own way. But like I could say like my high school art teacher or something, you know what I mean? Like there's lots of people that like, give you a little bit and then you like stack that up and then you build something new. It's like, I don't think I've never had one person that I like idolized or like tried to model myself after. I don't know.
No, I agree with that. I try to put together, and I'm like a terrible blogger keeper-upper on that stuff, but one of the things that I try to produce, and mostly because of coming back to Full Sail, are like lists of books that I've read, and typically the people who write those or movies or things out there that I've read, those are the people that I'm looking to, and it changes very often depending on what I'm doing. I spend a lot more time reading and listening and like digesting stuff that's more about like ethereal spirituality, kind of far out meditation stuff, than necessarily like industry stuff, because I can apply it to what I do and then it becomes relevant.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I'm kind of like, there's not one particular person that I looked up to. There's a lot of people who through my career I've learned a lot from, and had great role models, and also do read a lot and take things from different aspects of life and apply that to my job.
This is gonna be kind of an off question, I suppose, but did you ever feel like there was something stopping you, blocking you, keeping you from getting to where you wanted to go, or getting to that first job or anything like that? Was there anything that you felt like was holding you back?
Not really.
That's good. That's good.
No, I don't know. But again, like I think I put that down to having a really strong parental push, because it sort of just gave me the confidence, and like I think a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people do, and a lot of people don't. It's kind of like they sort of set you up, don't they, for like an approach. And yeah, my dad was always like, he was a little bit discouraging about not doing like the 4-year degree thing, because he's like his mother was like the first person or the first woman in their whole lineage to go to college, and she was like the valedictorian, or however you pronounce that, and she was like a really, really smart woman, and like her brains like just like propagated down into the family. And like and my dad is like super smart, and he recognized that his mother was really unique in her generation, And he wanted us to see that, even though we didn't, we weren't around her very much because, they're from Wisconsin. But yeah, I mean, that sort of education thing, I think, is and being really encouraging and having encouraging people that like just promote you to do that and like, give you the confidence to kind of make your own way and make your own decisions and trust you and like think that you're going to make the right decisions like for yourself, I think it's super valuable because then it just means that you don't really think twice about it. You just kind of go with it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to slip in a little bit about women. Did you notice? I'm like, my grandma was really one.
We're going to ease into it. We're going to ease into it.
Hey, it said not a panel about. Well, I guess since we're kind of on the topic of women, I mean, we've heard stories of other Hall of Fame inductees saying, they slept on friends' couches for years upon end until they made it. Did you ever feel like you were climbing that ladder and going back down and then coming, one rung and then back two and then up one and then sometimes up 3 or 4 and then back down 2? Did you ever feel like that, or was there a moment where you were like, I just have to keep persevering and I will get to that point where I want to be?
I mean, I lived in another grad's living room in Los Angeles for a little while after college, and it was all of the non-glamorousness that it could possibly have been in the Valley at 20 years old with no car. So, I mean, but that wasn't part of, that was part of growing me. Mm-hmm. That wasn't part of me in the corporate world in a lot of ways. I don't think my struggles were any more unique or different than the dudes that were doing the same things that I did. But I don't think that's necessarily always true now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I got out of Full Sail, I went back to Pennsylvania and did my internship at a little sound company. I worked there for several months, pretty much for nothing, just for the job experience, so I couldn't afford to live there anymore. And then had my roommate from Full Sail who was still living in this area and was begging me to come back, and moved down to Florida. And there was tons of work here, so I moved back to Florida, lived on her couch, exactly for months, and worked, just moved around a lot. But it was just, the constant, one job leading to the next, and it's a struggle, but it's also, it's making you, figure things out. It's, you're growing your experience, you're growing your career. All of that is a journey, to where you want to get to. And you need to kind of go through that to figure out who you are and exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, I definitely kind of, I slept on someone's couch too. So, no. But when I moved to LA, I had a short job, which was camera tracking, and that lasted for a few months. And I had moved there, and I was staying on my friend's couch and all this stuff. And then when that job ended, there was a long lull, in which I was like, oh well. What else can I do that's interesting, while this isn't moving, So I got a job working at a record store in Santa Monica, which is still one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had. But that's the thing is, I there's lots of different things to enjoy, And but in terms of career progression, that was definitely a peak and a trough and a peak and a trough. It's sort of, I think that kind of goes back to the persistence part. It wasn't about banging on the doors for me. It was more about committing to living a life and keeping it together, and being available and open for opportunities, and taking those when they came, and trying to basically just do what I needed to do. Even when I got a visual effects job again, it was only part-time because they couldn't really afford to pay me very much, or at least that's what they said. So I was doing both. I was doing both of those things. I was working at the visual effects house in the morning, and then I was working at the record store in the evening. And I did that for 2 years. And so yeah, there's definitely and even now, even further on in the career, there's always those peaks and troughs because as Kim said earlier, like you're not like at the end. There's always something that you're trying to do, or something that you don't like, or something that you're trying to achieve, or so there's constant ups and downs, like all the time, in terms of like, am I doing this right, or am I a big fraud and I'm nobody, like I'm just faking it and everybody's gonna know, they're gonna find me out.
Full Sail is I should say, predominantly male when, up until recently, and now the female population is growing. Do you guys see that also in your industry, that, you're working with more women, that, there's more women coming into the industry, or do you feel like it's still the same as when you entered the industry?
For me, when I first started doing live sound, I would constantly hear, wow, you're the first female sound engineer I've ever seen. And at the time, I only knew of one other one, and we actually met for the first time in 2012 after having known of each other for 20 years, never crossed paths. But in the last probably 7 or so years, I've been starting to hear from people like, oh, wow, do you know this female sound engineer? Like, we all know each other. But it's changed from where I've never seen another female doing this to now, people are like, oh, well, do you know so-and-so and so-and-so? And, they start rattling off names of other ones, which is really kind of cool. And I also, there's a lot more females, a lot more women working for the major sound companies and on local crews than there has been for a long time.
I think for riggers in visual effects, I think there's definitely more girls now, especially in your sort of, just in school, just coming out of school. I've been doing lots of student events, and there's so many girl riggers, and it's really cool, actually. I've been looking for riggers like incessantly for the last year and a half, and there aren't that many. Like, the proportion of applicants are very small, but the hit rate for hire is really high. So it's more just about people getting turned on to it. I think there's a high proportion of women in my workplace, but they tend to be in production, producers, in support roles like HR. So there's lots of women there, but as I said, they're kind of organizing stuff and dealing with the humans, you know what I mean?
Support roles.
Support roles, that's what they call them, support roles.
That's a good term. I agree with that. I mean, there's definitely a lot of women in the office, but they're primarily in support roles. I feel like there's more in what I do, but what I do changes so much. We want more. I know some other ladies that do similar stuff to me. We never sit around and we're like, I just need another lady programmer. Like, we're just want good ones. Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, I think that's more of what we get upset about. There's just not enough good ones.
But yes, I want good riggers, but actually I do want girls. Yeah. Because there's lots of conversation in these sort of panels about like everyone is equal and we can all do exactly the same thing. And yes, we can all do the same thing, but we do it different. Like, I think women are different, we approach things slightly differently, and I think it's a really positive thing, and I think you need that in the mix, because it contributes something unique, and like, what else is a team other than like people contributing unique things? And just because not all the women contribute exactly the same unique quality, but it's a spectrum, you know what I mean? It's like, and I want that spectrum.
Yeah, the mix.
Yeah, women bring, we have a different set of sensitivities, you bring a different traits to the job, and approach things a different way than a man does. So it is nice to have that balance.
Definitely. Well, I know with the full house, the ladies were talking earlier that they really want to hear from the audience and some of the questions that you guys have, including our online people. So at this time, we definitely have a good amount of time, if I can talk, to get some questions from you guys for the panelists. And for those of you online, there should be a moderator on there that you can direct your questions to. So just please look for the microphone. She's in the back there. Just raise your hand and she will come around to you guys.
Hi. So I was wondering, how is it that you guys deal, if you ever have, with discrimination against your gender, being a woman in the industry? Because I know as a show pro student, I want to go on tour, and I hear a lot of horror stories about things like that. So I just want to hear your experiences.
For me, actually, my experience in the industry has been very positive. I never really met with any sexism, or I just ignored it because I didn't care, because this is what I was going to do and no one was going to stop me. But I mean, at most, it's usually I meet with surprise, like I'll walk into a venue and people automatically assume, oh, you're the production assistant or your wardrobe? I'm like, no, I'm the front of house engineer. They're like, oh, cool. Okay, well, it's out there. So, it's kind of more so that people aren't used to seeing women in these roles, but once, they're introduced to it, it's, oh, well, that's kind of cool, I think at the lower levels, when you're starting out, it's worse than it is once you get into, start doing major touring with national recording artists and bands that are well known. Like, I actually would, when I first started working in clubs and I was mixing local bands, I would get harassed by the bouncer. Like, we'd go in, we'd set up, we'd sound check, I'd leave to go get dinner, I'd come back for the show, and they would try to charge me a cover charge, thinking I was, oh, dude, well, your girlfriend's got to pay. Like I was the girlfriend of the other guy from the sound company or from somebody in the band. And I'm like, no, I'm the sound engineer. Like, no, you're not the sound engineer. You got to pay. And they just thought I was trying to get in for free. So I would get, more, not harassment, but just, more from the bouncers than the people I was working with. And I've also found in touring, I've had a lot of production managers and tour managers tell me over the years that they really like having a woman on the bus because it just tends to bring the testosterone down a notch. So it's, it's like if you have a lot of women together, there's a lot of estrogen, so it's kind of good to have a guy in the mix. So it's the opposite of that. So I've really actually had more of a positive experience than a negative one. I mean, I've heard horror stories from other people, but in my own experience, it was never really a problem.
I don't feel like people at work discriminate, like typically. I mean, they certainly don't do it on purpose. I mean, they're smart people, and they know the difference between right and wrong. I really suffer discrimination the most around a pool table. So I know what it feels like to people they're like, you walk up to the pool table and they're like, oh, you should take this shot. Let me show you how to do it. And I'm like, I'm about to beat you. Like, it's really fun, actually. Like, I kind of enjoy that part of it, just to turn it around. So I've definitely seen it, and comparing to the pool table at work, obviously there's nothing even close to that. I think the only time that it sort of peppers up in terms of discrimination isn't because there's any sort of doors closed or people treating me different on purpose or anything like that. However, one thing that I have noticed, which tends to become problematic, is when you're working in a production environment and we're there late and we're all tired and we're stressed out and there's stuff breaking all over the place and it gets really stressful. If a man freaks out a little bit and has a bit of a temper tantrum, it's dismissed as passion or just give them a minute, they're just, they're artists. But if a woman does that, they are insane.
And that time of the month.
Yeah, and and one thing that I talk about sometimes is that most guys have a crazy ex-girlfriend, right? But isn't that just because the girlfriend didn't do what he wanted her to do? You know what I mean? And I see that. I do. I see that a lot. I see women's "Oop, she's unstable" and stuff like that, and I find that really offensive. Yeah, that's the main thing.
And I think that's that's really good to bring up because there's stuff that's not meant to be discriminatory. That's just people who are kind of dum-dums. They just don't know any better. They came from a place where it was somehow a time warp to the 50s and all the women cooked, and didn't have jobs. They just don't know. And then there's real discrimination. I had a conversation pretty recently with a business owner who, was looking at letting go of some people, and he said some of the women were concerned that at another company they wouldn't have equal pay. And that's real discrimination. And the fact of the matter is, regardless of how much progress, regardless of how many numbers we have in this industry, outside of this industry, in the United States, we do not have countrywide equal pay in every state. That is a fact, and that is discrimination. So when you are talking to employers, know what the rights are in your state. Ask if the men in your department are making the same salary that you're making. Ask to understand. Speak with HR about it. Don't speak with your boss because they don't like that. But speak with your HR department about it, and know what the playing field is. And if you want the playing field level, make sure that it's level. Find companies that are outspoken about that have women in leadership. Reach out to those women in leadership and tell them that you're interested in that company because they have women in leadership, and you want to support them. Women who have been in the industry longer really appreciate that, and we really love it. And there's a huge difference on the scale between dum-dums and discrimination. And the dum-dums out there, like, I think for a really long time for me, I just didn't even notice, because it was just so commonplace that somebody was like, oh, you can program a thing? Or programmers would explain something to me, which I kind of love the term mansplaining. Like, it's a dark term, but it's really great, and it does happen a lot to me, where someone will like explain something really remedial technically, because they'll be like, oh, she's a creative director, she's the designer. And then I'll be like, And it's fun because I've reached a point in my career where I used to get kind of fired up, and I'd be like, well, let me show you how smart I am, bud. And now I just have reached a point where it's like, oh, I can unlock all the secrets for you, but I'm just gonna sit here quietly, and I'm gonna hold that power and that knowledge for someone else. And I just nod.
Hello, ladies. My name's Alexis. I've kind of ran into situations in different projects where I get different. I tend to be the person that, especially if things are not really going very well, I tend to take the leadership role. It's kind of just, I'm not bragging, but it's something that people have told me that I kind of naturally do, and some people have been really appreciative of it, and others just kind of haven't. And I get the whole, you're being a, I'm not going to say the word, but you get my drift. I get that, and then that trickles down into, now they're telling other people, and it's no longer I'm being a good leader, it's just I'm being rude, and I'm being overbearing and overpowering. And is there a balance, or should you just keep doing what you're doing and then just kind of prove people wrong, or is there some type of balance? I don't know.
Everybody has their own style. And, I think it's the same. I think the same rule. I think you should just stick with what you feel is right. And if you're getting results and you're being like professional about it, I mean, what else can you do? It's like people are gonna call you bossy all the time. I mean, it's the playground, isn't it? Sometimes, but you can't. You can only control your own behavior. You can't like change other people's sort of perception of you. You just have to do what you think is right. And like, if you think that you're being reasonable and you're making things happen, then you should keep doing that.
Yeah. Team dynamics are really hard in what I do a lot of times, especially with other creatives that are at a similar level to me. That's always an interesting thing when you put a bunch of senior people in a room. It becomes exactly like being in school. It's kind of funny, you're nodding, And I very much defaulted the same throughout my whole life. Like, it was always, we have a project, or Kim's in charge, like science fair's coming. And as I've become a creative director, and as I've become a leader and a manager, and have had to run teams as well as be on teams with other kind of senior staff, I've realized that the best thing that I can do is start by opening up the floor and allowing someone else to take that role. And there's kind of like an elegant grace to it, and giving people space to succeed, giving people space to like step up. Because a lot of people will surprise you, and you won't think, if you're like me, it's like tunnel vision, like goal, success, perfection, go, and you just start moving like barracudas. And when you give people that space, they surprise you, and then all of a sudden you realize you don't have to do 10 jobs because somebody else, you said, who wants to do this? You want to manage this thing? And then they're like, oh yeah, cool. You know how to do it? You want me to help you? You good? And then it becomes much more fun that way. And it's hard, and that's a piece of patience that you'll learn. And that's going to be something that, for, I think, strong personalities and strong leaders of any gender, and, we all have to learn that and remember that.
Yeah, and to build on what both of them said, I agree. You can, if you take charge, you can do that, and you can find a balance to be doing, be the leader and be diplomatic and not stepping on other people. And if you are, and you are doing what you feel you need to be doing to get where you want to be, as long as you're not, holding anyone else back, you just got to stick true to yourself. And not everyone's always going to like you. Not everyone's always going to agree with you. And that's their problem, not yours, So it's hard to kind of not take things personally, but you kind of have to remember, all right, well, if they have a problem with me, that's their problem.
So we have a question from our online streaming students. We have a couple of questions actually for the panel. First of all, Kim, you already have a couple of votes for president based on the women and equality thing. We had that on the stream.
For the hair club of men.
Right?
Thank you.
Right? So you don't want to engage in this race? Come on. So Shawnee in Entertainment Business wants to know, and several of our online students also wanted to know, when you're an older student starting out, is that something that you find hard? Is age discrimination on top of gender discrimination? Or, we notice that a lot of internships go to those who are 25. Do you find that challenging? And if so, how do you overcome that challenge?
I can start with that question because I recently had an interesting age experience, and I actually haven't talked about it anywhere with really many people at all. I was hiring for a role, and a gentleman sent me his resume, and I looked at the resume, and I was like, oh, this looks really good. I'm going to invite him in to do an interview. So I invited him in, and I looked at his photo, everything. I invited him in to do an interview, and he was probably 40 years older than when the photo had been taken. So it was so bonkers, I didn't even know what to do with myself. And I didn't flinch, and I brought him in, and we sat down and we talked. And what had happened was that he basically omitted the majority of his career off of his resume. And the stuff that he did include was wildly misleading and inaccurate. And though I was at first taken with interviewing a little grandpa guy, I was disappointed. I was actually excited, and I was like, this could be really cool. What if this art director is this, he's the little debonair man, but then he didn't have the skills to pay the bills. All this stuff that he was talking about, he clearly didn't know about, and he had this very well-crafted resume, and it felt weird and misleading. And that was what the issue was with the candidate. And I don't think I would feel off-put at all about somebody that was older. And I've met quite a few older people that were starting out and working as designers. I worked at an agency once where a couple of the just design level folks, people that didn't want to become art directors or creative directors, they were just designers, and they were in their late 30s and 40s, and I was really taken by them, and they were so talented, and they didn't want any more big responsibility. They loved what they did day in and day out, and started their careers a bit later, and they were very, very happy. So at least to me, I don't think you face that as much, when you're looking at bigger companies with more diverse teams.
We don't really. I mean, we're a pretty young industry. We're growing a little bit older, but there, I don't think on my floor, I don't think there's anyone over 44. I think, for the most part. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of hiring. I don't think I've had an applicant over the age of 40. So age discrimination, I don't know how much context there is in that particular, in my experience. However, I do think, at the company that I work for, they're really flexible and good about people's lives. They really try to like negotiate with people to find flexible working hours that work for them, and this is important obviously for people with families. And you know, for me, those, as people get older, they tend to sort of priorities start shifting around a little bit. That's not always the case, but sometimes it is. And yeah, I think it's important for companies to kind of keep an eye and make sure that that they're being fair to people who can't just like throw 100% of themselves in, you know, full time, because we're not freelancers. Where I work, we're there every day for many years, and so yeah, we kind of, and obviously sort of peaks and troughs, and people got to pitch in when you got to pitch in, but yeah, I think there is sometimes the odd comment or snark, like if someone's, you know, has a day off a week, or if they leave early on Wednesdays or whatever, you know what I mean? And I find that a bit unfair, and it does happen. I would say it's kind of going back to what you were saying about the, I'm not to call my colleagues dum-dums, but the more of like just sort of the offhanded comment because they're being inconvenienced versus actual discrimination. Yeah, which I don't think I don't see a huge amount of discrimination.
Yeah, in live sound, it's not so much about your age. I mean, it's more about the skill. In touring, you know, it's definitely something people get into when they're younger, because the older you get, the harder it gets. It's a, you know, it's a difficult lifestyle. So someone who's older and trying to get into, you know, touring might get not discriminated against, but get questioned, like, you at this age, you sure you want to, you know, start doing this, because it's, well, are you going to want to have a family? Once you get that question when you're young, but once you get older, and you know, if those things start factoring in, it's a harder lifestyle to start. But you know, there's lots of jobs in live sound that don't involve touring, and it's more about, you know, do you have the skills? Do you have, you know, do you know the craft, as opposed to, well, how old are you? You know, that doesn't seem to ever be an issue.
It does seem to be kind of like a trend, like an interesting trend, because we were just talking the other day, because we were sort of like Full Sail were showing us like some demographics about you guys, so that we could learn more about you, not just here on campus but also online, and that was super interesting. Because basically they were saying that like on campus, like the majority of people are like kind of wealthy young white boys, and online, there was a really high proportion of like 30-something black women. And I was like, that is really interesting, because it's like, why is that? You know, like I don't know, it's hard to make assumptions, but like, I don't know, I think when people get a little older and maybe they have like families, I think women tend to sort of have children in like their late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, you know, like throughout this period. And I think it's difficult to sort of commit to full-time school, and like this factors not just in school. This is like work too, you know?
Everything.
Yeah, it's like having a family for a woman like takes a big role in their, like, not that it doesn't for men, of course it does, but it tends to affect the everyday goings-ons of women more often than men.
Well, I mean, a baby feeds off your body. And that's a fact. And like this,
yes, Kim, yes.
Well, like that simple thing about it, like we don't talk about that. And I'll be in conversations with like male coworkers, and this is when it's kind of a dumb thing, but it's so bizarre to me, and they'll all be like talking about their families and like, it's so hard, this and that, and they all have stay-at-home wife mothers of their children. And I'll be like, you have like a full-time caregiver, companion, are you bonkers having this conversation right now? Like it's crazy, and and then, I'll hear a guy at work be like, I'm taking a nap in the lactation room. I'm like, that's not what that's for, bro. And I think it's impressive that there are businesses now that are having rooms like that, whether they call them the peace room or whatever they want to do to like pretend like there isn't breast milk in there. Like, we've become a society that doesn't talk about our bodies and doesn't talk about the physiology of these factors of it, and the psychology of having to be a working mother, and be a caregiver. You can't choose to have a remote position from your family when you're the mother of the kids most often. There are some stay-at-home fathers that make that a reality, but that's kind of like one of the taboo things to talk about still, at least I feel in my generation, of how that happens from a family standpoint. That's like some kind of weird mystery that you go see an oracle and figure out. So I don't have that answer. Do not ask that question.
That's true though. Like I mean, I don't have children myself, but like I notice that when people take time off, especially in the UK, there's a lot of time off for mothers, a lot more than here in the States. So people take time off, they feed their babies, they stay at home with their children, and I think when they go back to work, if they go back to work, there's a big hurdle to get over, like a huge mental hurdle, and a physical one, and like everything. It's like it's a really, really, really hard thing to do. You know what I mean? And like lots of people don't get through that, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's a lack of female leadership in sort of upper echelons, because it takes a long time to get to those positions. And lots of them have children, but they had to get over that huge hurdle of like, all of these sort of natural factors that like, make humans not eat their babies. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's part of like being a human, and it takes that much more for a woman who's basically the baby's like kind of part of their body. You know what I mean? It's like,
and that's the big conversation of it is that stops. Like, there's a big talk in advertising now about how only 3% of creative directors are women. 3%. You wouldn't become a creative director until you're much more mature in your career. So everybody's all mad, like, these agencies need to promote more of these women. And it's like, no, it's not just that women aren't given the opportunities. There's so much lifestyle that goes into those choices, of how they're going to be able to maintain that career and that balance and be able to, if they're having a family, have it, and still be able to move up and be able to be a leader, and then they have to go in soccer games. Like, it's so much more complicated than just having the opportunity available, because there's so much more decision making involved in it.
but I think that's something that employers could do, and the government, I think, could do more, because women need the support. It's like I said, it's a hurdle. It's a huge mountain you have to climb to get back to work. If you really want to get back to work, it's like a really hard thing to do. So I think they need the support, help them. If if they have a partner, or if they have friends, or if they need some time off.
Childcare at work.
Childcare at work. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Flexible working conditions to help.
That's awesome, and the comments on here are flying about how great this information is that you guys are sharing. So we thank you so much for that. We do have a question about negotiating pay, and you touched on this a little bit, Kim, when talking with the HR director. But I think more this kind of goes to maybe a freelance kind of situation of how do you find the best negotiation skill? What is your best negotiation skill, I guess, and how important is your ability to negotiate your pay?
Oh, if you're a freelancer, that's it. That's everything that you need to know. So there's a resource out there, and it came into my mind when I was on a panel yesterday, but I was too kind of sleepy to remember. But if you're working freelance, join the Freelancers Union. They exist. They're out of New York. They support you. You can get health insurance through them. You can get contract training through them. You can network about jobs through them. And it's not just for designers. You know, you can be in lighting. You can be a photographer. If any, it's for freelance workers in like creative world. And they're thousands strong and growing. So they're small, tiny, but mighty. And it's a non-dues guild, so it's free to join, which makes it really cost effective. And you know, they'll help you with that support, and it's a gender neutral site. So the things that they give you from an information standpoint about contracts are the same things that, you know, your male counterparts will have. So I think it's a skill that everybody has, and I don't think that women are inherently worse at it than men. I think if anything, maybe they're a little bit better, because they can be disorienting, I think, more, because we're kind of like a centaur sometimes when we come into a room. Like they just don't expect you to be a woman, so there's like already this element of surprise. Not that you're like sneaking up on your contract negotiations, but you know, I mean, it's a really important skill to have. You know, get used to it. Don't be afraid to talk about money. Like, it's in our getting paid for art panel. One of the things I said was, you know, I've said to people, like, if you want, like, you can't pay me, come clean my house. Like, I'm not afraid to say that, like, there's lots of things that I pay people to do. I'd be more than happy to have you do that. And if I want to do the work, like, we can work something out. And don't be afraid of it. Like, it's not this evil, weird thing you can't talk about. It's okay.
In live sound, I'm independent, a freelancer, and I have to negotiate every tour that I do. I have to negotiate with someone, and it can be difficult because in my industry, people, you kind of know, you have an idea of what everybody else makes, what your peers make, but no one ever talks about it, and there's no set, like, well, when you get to this level, you make this much. There's just no set wage. It's basically you get hired for a tour, and the production manager or tour manager or whoever's hiring you has a number that he's going to pay for that job, for that position. So you either, you know, sometimes they'll say, okay, well, here's how much the job is paying, and then you either accept it if you want the job, or you try and negotiate. What I tend to do, what works really well, is because you don't want to price yourself out of a job, but you also don't want to sell yourself short. So it's important to know what you're worth, and to know, you know, kind of where your peers are with the same level of experience, kind of have an idea of what that pay range is. But when you are first negotiating, they usually say, well, what's your rate? Well, try and get them to give you a figure first. Because if you say, well, you know, what is the job paying, or what are you guys looking to pay, then they can throw out a figure, and it's usually going to be low, you know, because they always want to give you as little as possible. But if they throw out the first figure and that falls within your range of what you think you're worth, then you're good to go. You can try and negotiate a little bit more. If it's way below what you're used to making or what you need to make, then, you know, you can just come back with, well, you know, that's not quite what I'm used to. My normal rate is this rate, and then start negotiating from there. But you got to kind of have a ballpark. It's good to start with a range of, you need to know, like, what do you need to survive? How much money do you need coming in every month to pay your bills, all your overhead, you know, whatever your monthly net is? What is that bottom line figure? And then what would you like to be making? What do you think you're worth? You know, what is the amount you would like to see? So you have the bottom and the high end of the range, and that just gives you a little bit of room to play. So you know, get them to throw out the figures, see where that lands within your range, and go from there. It's a good place to start.
Yeah, I'm not a freelancer, but negotiation is still really important, and I think people tend to ask permission. Can I please negotiate? And you don't need permission. You can just do it. And like, I think there's probably lots of techniques, you know, there's like lots of strategies you can use. Those sounded really good. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do that. But yeah, I think, you know, taking stock, you know, occasionally, like, I think when you're new and you're just out of school, there's going to be typically a rate that they're going to pay you, and they're always going to try to pay you the least that they possibly can. So know that, you know, they're trying to pay you less than you're worth for the most part, because, you know, they're business, and business is typically their main goal is to make cash. So yeah.
there. I'm Liz. I'm back here. I just had a quick question about dealing with anxiety in terms of like a new position when you guys started kind of moving up in your careers. How did you guys deal with any anxiety about a new position? And are there strategies to convert that anxiety to like creativity? And how did you guys go about that, if it occurred?
I can kick that one off if you guys want. So I have a pretty raw anxiety disorder. I mean, you probably can't tell while I'm sitting up here. But I'm doing pretty good with it at this point. And mine kind of set on really bad in like the center of my career, in a lot of ways, and it was really uncomfortable, to say the least, and it was really, really, really painful to deal with. And I found, there were a few key tools that I needed to get for myself. Music was a big part of that. I'd have like these are my jams, my settle down jams, and I would listen to them when I was in like a really good space, and then I would like use them to get me there when I was in like a not good space. In the workplace, especially when you have to, it's like so easy when you're in isolation, when you're like by yourself and you can like maintain, but when you're with others, it can be really difficult. And I found that the best thing is to just take a second, tell the person that you're talking with, like, I'm feeling really nervous right now. And typically, I would say 9 times out of 10, that person is gonna be like, it's totally okay, I know. And you're gonna be met with way more compassion than you think you're gonna get in that moment. And I've been on the inverse of it now in the later part of my career, where I've had candidates in interviews that have clearly been like shaking nervous. And I've been like, are you nervous right now? It's okay, like, I know. And then they settle back and they relax down. And it's like when you admit that it's there, it becomes a little bit easier, but you're in control. And you can't forget the fact that like you're in control of this machine and you're responsible for this machine. If you need to take 5 so that you can do 55 great minutes of work, go and speak with someone and take 5 and they'll understand that. But remember that you need to make up that 5, and find a place that will work with you and find balance with you. And you can absolutely get there.
I think I agree with everything Kim said. Also, like she said about when you are nervous, just kind of acknowledge that, like, oh, I'm having some anxiety here, because as soon as you acknowledge the feeling, it kind of starts to go away. And if you have to tell someone, look, I'm really a little nervous about this, it also, remember that just means you want to do a good job. It means you care about what you're doing. So a little bit of nervousness and anxiety is good, because if you weren't, then you're not pushing yourself to do, better, or you just don't care, and that's never good.
I agree with everything that they said. Also, I think there's a couple, I'm sort of thinking of like job interview nerves, you know what I mean? Which typically, I think, if I get really nervous, like if I'm, not necessarily when I'm interviewing, but if I'm on stage or something, like I have been yesterday, just take it slow. When you're talking, take deep breaths. Pauses are okay. Just take a pause, think about what you're gonna say it. It's totally okay. I mean, it's a human exchange. I get anxiety about new projects. I get anxiety about new roles. I get anxiety about all kinds of stuff. And that never goes away, because I'm always doubting if I can achieve something. I don't know how I'm gonna approach it. I often feel like I've got too much, more than I can handle. I'm like in the weeds. I'm like, I feel that a lot, but I also know that I'm not gonna die. You know what I mean? And that's something that I used to tell myself a lot. Like, if I was really scared, about taking a step or saying yes or no to something, like, you're gonna be okay, and you can. It's not like it's not life or death here. Like, it's okay. Like, just make your decision. Just like take that step. Like, you're gonna be fine. You know, you'll recover if anything goes wrong. Like, we're not curing cancer or doing heart surgery or anything like that. I don't know what kind of. We should be asking them how to deal with anxiety. But it's a really good point, actually. I used to get these pains in my jaw when I got really stressed out, like sharp pains, like, and when I'd open my jaw, it would like crack really, really loudly. And I thought, I was like, do I have arthritis in my jaw? And that just made it worse, you know? And then I went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, are you stressed at work? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, of course I am, you know, it's like normal for me. And he's like, so you're going on vacation next week? I was like, yes. He goes, if this still hurts when you get back from vacation, then you come back here. And I was like, okay, I went away on vacation. I totally forgot about it. Jaw was fine. Second I got back on the plane, crack. And I was like, oh, okay, like I see what's happening here. And now if I feel any pings, I'm just like, I'm stressed. I need to like chill, just take a deep breath, acknowledge it, as you said, it gets rid of 90% of it.
Hello. So we once had someone tell us that, someone told me once that in order to make it in the industry, that you needed to act like a dude, like you needed to be less feminine. And have you found that like be the case, or have you found that you can be successful being feminine and being a woman?
Who told you that?
It was like a guest lecturer kind of a thing, and they were like, in order to make it, you need to be like act like a dude, or they'll respect you less. And I didn't agree with that at all, so I just wanted to know your guys' opinion.
They're fired. As a committee, we just fired that person.
It was probably a guy, right?
Was it a man or a woman?
It was a girl? Wow.
That's a bummer.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Don't listen to that.
I will say, when I first started doing live sound, being that, you know, there were no women on the crew, you know. Well, actually, there was a girl who was our merchandise person, but I felt like I needed to kind of, you know, dress down. Not like I dress up all the time, but like on tour, you know, you're not going to dress fancy because your clothes are going to get ruined anyway. So you just kind of dress for the job. But I wouldn't, you know, wear a lot of makeup. I would wear a baseball cap and just kind of try not to be real feminine. And I started to realize, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to do that. I'm good at my job. People will respect me. They're not going to look at me like, you know, like if I get up and I actually do my hair and makeup, they're not going to be like, oh God, who, you know, here comes the girl. And then I think what the turning point was when I started touring with a bunch of guys who would sit in the front lounge doing their nail polish at night, you know, putting their black nail polish on and their eyeliner, and I'm like, well, the guys I'm working with are wearing more makeup than me. I'm okay if I look like a girl. So you kind of might feel that way when you're starting out, that you have to be like the guys to fit in. You do kind of have to be able to hang with the guys because you're going to be working around them. So you have to be able to, you know, be comfortable around men, but you don't have to be like them. And like we talked about earlier, women do bring a different set of sensibilities to the job, and it is nice to have that balance. There are certain things that men do. You know, men tend to be more. There was a great book by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, how she talked about how if you go into a business meeting, men will all take the seats around the table, but the women will kind of tend to sit along the back wall. Even though they're equal positions, the women will you know, just kind of give all the front seats to the men. And that's why a lot of these women will get passed up for promotion or not taken seriously. So you kind of have to sort of play the game. It's like if you want to be treated with respect, then you got to demand it. You got to, you know, get up there and be in the, you know, at the table with the men. So to that aspect, you kind of have to approach things a little bit more aggressively, or assertively, not so much aggressively. But I don't think you have to be less feminine to be in the business.
Yeah, like being active or professional isn't a male trait. It's just like maybe we see men in those positions more, so somehow it's maybe someone's identifying that with males, but that's not the case. And I don't think, you know, I'll put out a blanket statement and say, with only a few exceptions of like maybe wearing something a little bit more professional, you shouldn't really dress to achieve something. You know what I mean? It's like you just dress the way that you're comfortable, and that's appropriate for the environment you're in, and that makes you feel good because that's important, you know? So like, I don't think, and acting like a man, I don't even know what that means, but yeah, I certainly don't, I certainly think you should act like a woman because you are one, and that's good. There's nothing to hide.
Don't act like yourself. Be yourself. You know, I get asked that question a lot. Like, do you think that you gotta be like a dude to be with the dudes? And maybe it was like the time when I started, because I think I was the only woman in the room, in every room, for like the majority of the beginning of my career. And it happens still, you know, quite a bit more than I would like. But it was never part of a conversation that I was a woman, ever. And it wasn't necessarily that like nobody noticed. It was just that there was nothing sexual about what we were doing. Gender wasn't part of the conversation. I didn't make it part of the conversation. So I think it bums me out, that question, because it bums me out about how we're defining what femininity is, you know? And like, if you're gonna walk around your place of work with your thong hanging out, to me, that's not femininity, but you are sexualizing that situation. And if you choose to sexualize that situation, then you will be met back with sexual energy. And I think that's something that you need to be very aware of as a woman, that it's a very powerful thing that we have with our bodies, that we can dictate how we want that scale to be. And this is all my opinion, it's not fact. This is how I operate professionally. But like, if I walked around with my cleavage out all the time, I would probably have more conversations about the fact that I'm a woman or about lady stuff. I don't know. But I don't, because I don't want stuff getting stuck in there. So I'm at work. That's not boob time, you know. So it's really what it's like what do you want your day to be about? And I would feel the same about a guy. And I've worked with guys that'll wear like really deep V's with like all their chest hair out, and I'll say something the same as I would say to a woman with a lot of cleavage out. I'd be like, yeah, a lot of stuff going on, you know, like you want to button up before we go in this meeting?
And I don't know if I wouldn't say that I would agree with if you dress like this according to some standard, that then you can expect some certain kind of behavior. Like, and I know that's not what you meant, but I hear that sometimes, and I don't know. I mean, I think you kind of know the lines of like what's like provocative versus like
feminine.
Not just dressing like normal, like if a guy came to work with like you know, with like one of those really saggy Florida vests, or what are they called, tank tops, you know, with like his armpits hanging out and stuff, it's like too much skin, you know what I mean? It's not sexual, but it's like too much, like I don't need it, you know what I mean? It's not professional.
Yeah, just like dress appropriate for the job.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know, I don't think like everybody needs to cover up or anything, you know?
No, I don't think you need to cover up. I wasn't trying to say you need to cover up. If you want to let the girls out, let the girls out. I'm just saying. Yeah, I was just saying, like, if you sexy it up, like if you're sexying up the conversation, like you'll be met back with that energy. You know, I've worked with quite a few female designers that are really pretty women and really pretty girls, and they'll wear like mini skirt dresses and stuff like that, and they sit at their desk and they design all day, and nobody's up in their business, and nobody's just like, how short is that skirt today? You know, like nobody cares. You know, they're going out dancing after work, like. They're not like bending over the desk and like, let me get you that, you know, like that. That's when it becomes inappropriate. Like you choose, like you can wear the thing, but then when you do the thing, then it becomes. Thank you for making me clarify my point.
Well, on that note.
You did it so well, good.
Thank you. I have a lot of practice.
Oh man. Well, we are out of time, unfortunately, but thank you guys so much for attending the session today, and thank you to our guests, Kim, Laurie, and Michelle, for your knowledge and valuable information and humorous information, yes. So to everyone out there, have a wonderful day, and I hope you guys get to some more sessions.
Thank you.